Hello. I'd like to talk to you today about something that's really at the heart of leadership. And if we agree that leadership is a social process, in other words, it can't happen, it doesn't happen unless it involves people, then right at the core of that is our understanding of the impact we have on other people, our behaviors, the things that we say and we do. How are they received by others? And do they have a positive impact on what we're trying to do? Or do they actually turn people away from us or create misunderstandings? So feedback is really, really essential. And you might say, well, why do we need feedback? Well, it's because we need to develop our self-awareness. We really do need to understand how our behaviors impact on others. So what I want to do is just share a few thoughts with you today. I want to share a very useful, very well-researched model of feedback created by the Center for Creative Leadership. I want to explain how to use it, and also then to finish by saying, well, if we do use it, what are likely to be the results? What are the benefits we're going to have by actually using feedback, not just giving it, but receiving it and also acting upon it. So first of all, the why piece. Why feedback? Well, so often things fail in relationships, in teams, at work, because what you intend to do, what your intentions are often read by other people as anything but what you intended. So by asking someone if they need any help, you might think you're being helpful, you're showing some leadership, you're showing support for your colleagues. They might see it as, oh, here he comes again, micromanaging. Here he comes again, checking up on me. Why can't he leave me alone and let me get on with my work? So it's really important that we understand the impact. And then if we think about it a bit further, well, what is this? What is this process that we can use that over the last 50 years, CCL have done research into? It's at the core of most of the programs of development that they're involved with, and it's certainly the sort of thing that Britt, Ian and I would use in our daily lives. And it's a very simple model, but it's actually quite difficult to use. And I'm going to explain that. So it's called SBI. The S stands for situation, the B stands for behavior, and the I stands for impact. And when you bring those three things together, when you anchor something in a moment in time, when you're very clear about the behavior that's being used, and you have a clear understanding of the impact that that behavior has had on someone else, then it's a powerful tool. And it's a powerful self-development tool, and leadership, after all, starts with ourselves, first of all. So let me explain a little bit more about it, and then I'll give you some examples. So often when people are giving feedback, in our experience, they'll say things like, hey, great job, or well done, or thank you for staying on. That was really, really kind of you to finish that piece of work off. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's all part of the sort of social cohesiveness, the language of social cohesion that we need. People need to be acknowledged. People need to be recognized. So we're not talking about those sort of issues. However, if we're really talking about how do we help as leaders, how do we help people to get even better, then we need to be identifying for them the things that have had a positive impact on us. And they, in return, if we're receiving feedback from them, they need to identify for us the things that we've done that have been helpful or not so helpful. So the situation is about anchoring whatever the behavior is in a moment in time. That helps us to avoid, I don't know whether you live in these sort of environments, I certainly do, where you hear people say, oh, you always do that, or you never do that, or I can't remember the last time you did this. So when you anchor it in a moment in time, in a situation, it's very clear both in your own mind, thinking about your reaction to it, but also in the mind of the other person you're giving the feedback to. When you think about behavior is really quite simple to identify. It's either something you can hear, so someone says something and you hear it, or it's something that you see. So it's something that someone does. Anything else is actually us putting a sort of an emotional judgment, putting things together and making sense of it. So for instance, you might say, well, gosh, she's very angry today. That's not behavior. Anger itself is not behavior. But what you're doing is observing a number of behaviors that when you put them together, you draw the conclusion that the person is angry. So they might be shouting. They might be red in the face. They might have slammed a door as they went out, having had a conversation with you. They might just be sitting very silently, pushed back, looking really quite stressed. All of those behaviors are things that we then put together and describe as anger. But anger in itself is not behavior. And it's true of so many other things. So the behavioral piece is, what did they do or say? And then if you take the final bit, which is probably the most difficult bit, the impact piece, what was the impact on you of their behavior? And this is sometimes difficult, particularly when you're first using this technique, because often you tend to run the risk of saying, and you made me feel, or you made me. And with this process, we want to avoid doing that. The feelings are owned by you. Someone else is not responsible for your feelings. They may have behaved in a way that's created a feeling in you of unhappiness or sadness or joy or delight that you've been recognized for doing something. But that's your feelings. Those are your feelings that you own. So if we take the situation, first of all, let's make it really clear, see how it works. So, for instance, you might say, at the morning meeting on Monday, when we have gone through the agenda, that's the situation. The behavior might be, you explained the project and where we had got to with all the deadlines and the gates in a clear and precise way. That's the behavior. And the impact on me was that I felt I had a much better understanding when you'd finished your presentation as to exactly where the project had got to. So what am I going to learn if I receive that feedback? That there was something about the clarity and the way I presented the data which gave the impression that the project was where it needed to be and that people had a clear understanding. You could also take it another way and say, well, at the meeting on Monday, as I was going through the agenda, you and Claire started to have a conversation while I was trying to explain the items on the agenda. The impact on me was that you hadn't appreciated just how much care I put into putting the agenda together and to making sure the meeting was a success. And what that's doing is saying to someone else, you need to be careful. You might have an important thing to say. You might have a comment to make. You might just be sharing a little side joke with someone. But actually in doing that, the impact on someone else is that it's a negative impact on them, that they feel that somehow you're not listening, you're not taking notice of what they've spent some time doing. And you often find this in interactions between groups, that people develop behaviors that actually they don't realize are quite counterproductive until someone has the courage to actually tell them what that behavior is and the impact it's having on them. Now, the great thing about SBI, is it avoids any personal criticism. It avoids judgment. So you're not making a judgment about anything. You're just simply saying, this was the situation, this was the behavior, and this was the impact on me. This is how I felt as a result of that behavior. And it sounds easy, but actually it's quite difficult to do. It's almost more difficult sometimes to actually say to people, I'd like you to use this model with me. I'd like you to give me feedback. Because as we started this piece, if you're wanting to develop your leadership skills, wanting to develop your self-awareness, you can only do that if people actually tell you about the impact that you have on them. And you need to listen. So if we've done all of that, why is it so important as a leader to use a feedback mechanism such as SBI? Well, there are 2 or 3 things I just want to leave you with, some thoughts to think about. First of all, you help to develop your own self-awareness. So you can get a feel for the impact you have on people. And actually, sometimes you find that the behavior expressed to one person, you may have a very positive impact on, but the same behavior expressed to someone else might have a detrimental impact, or at least have an impact that's not what you were wanting. So it gives you a chance to realize that individuals are unique and they're different, and therefore you need to be aware that using one form of behavior, type of language, saying something to someone may have a different result to someone else. So that's one thing. The second thing is it builds your authenticity, because leadership, successful leadership needs leaders who are authentic. People can trust you if you're authentic. They know who you are. They know how you respond. They know that what you say you're going to carry through. So you get some feedback, and someone says, "Well, actually, Matthew, it would be really, really helpful. The meeting on Friday, or the conversation we had in the corridor. While I was trying to explain to you certain aspects that were of concern to me about how we were rolling out the piece of work, you looked at your mobile phone. And the impact on me was you weren't really concentrating on what I had to say. Now, you might have glanced at your mobile phone and not realized, but getting that feedback, you say, right, I must stop doing that. And people then notice that actually when they're having conversations with you, even though your mobile phone may go off, or even though you may have something important to do, for the moment you put your mobile phone down, you don't look at it, and straight away they can say, we gave them some feedback the other week about it, and they've listened and they've taken action. So it builds your authenticity, it builds your listening skills, it demonstrates, in fact, that you've been listening. And ultimately, that helps to build the relationship between you and the team. So think about feedback. There are lots of different models. Certainly the one that I and Britt and Ian and others that we work with use is the SBI model from CCL. There's a lovely book that you can get, just a small book, on their website at ccl.org, or through us at Let's Talk Leadership. It's a book called Feedback That Works. It's really helpful. It's a practical guide covering the sorts of things that I've just been talking about. And if you'd like to know more about feedback and how it works and how to use it, we're going to be running some workshops on it in the near future. Watch for our website, watch out for information on it. In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of a little book like this, just as a pocket guide, then let us know. But good luck with it. Feedback, self-awareness is at the very heart of leadership.